But Andrew, there are a couple of topics that I've sensed top of mind at Davos, and there's a shorthand that people use a lot to talk about the timelines for transformational AI. And I want to see if that lexicon works for you. We hear a lot about AGI. I wonder if you like the concept. If so, what your definition of it is, and if so, how soon is it coming?
Sure. And hey, thanks, Andy. It was great to be with you. I find the concept AGI very problematic because there are so many definitions of it now that it's lost meaning. Different people say the same word but mean very different things by it. The original definition for AGI was something like AI that could do any intellectual task that a person can. And the broader public thinks of this as meaning AI that's as intelligent as humans. So one sign of when we get to this level of AGI is if AI could do the job of any remote worker with similar training as a remote worker. Frankly, I think we're decades, maybe more than decades away from that. It's very far away. But what has happened is a number of businesses, in an attempt to show progress, drive excitement, has been using alternative definitions of AGI that set a way lower bar that's way easier to achieve. I think I was chatting with Eric Brinelson and Andy McAfee that point out things like, the definitions like AI that could do 50% of economically useful work or whatever. Well, if you start measuring from the 1800s, when most of humanity was in agriculture, most of that is now automated. So I think we got to AGI many decades ago by some definitions. So when most of society thinks AGI means AI as intelligent as humans, it's scary if we think AI can automate all knowledge work. We're so far away from that. And when businesses have alternative definitions that set a lower bar and say AGI will appear in a few quarters, I see this misleading college students. They're choosing different majors because they think AI will obsolete certain jobs, and CEOs that are making capital allocation decisions on the basis of overly optimistic forecasts of what AI will get to.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you are not super worried about short to medium term serious technological unemployment. Do I have that right?
So, and another thing I was very influenced by kind of Eric, Andy, and collaborators' work is these task-based analysis of jobs. So here's what I'm seeing in terms of unemployment. For most jobs, if you take a job, break it down into tasks, for many jobs, maybe 30–40% of the tasks can be done by AI. And what that means is we still need humans to do 60–70% of those jobs. But it is also true, therefore, that a human that uses AI will be much more productive than and will replace a human that does not, but AI will not replace a human. Now, having said that, just for full transparency, there is a very small subset of jobs where AI could do almost 100% of it, and those jobs will go away. I am worried about the translators. I'm worried about the voice actors, a lot of the call center operators. Those jobs will struggle. And as a society, I feel more imperative to create a safety net and take care of these people, because just because someone's job goes away does not mean they deserve to be thrown out onto the street. So we've got to take care of people. At the same time, for the vast majority of the population, the challenge will be upskilling them to use AI. And I worry about the magnitude of that challenge and whether we're up to executing that at the speed that it requires. But I hopefully we can all work on that together.
Would you add software engineer to that list of translator and customer service rep as a job that might be largely automated by AI?
Yeah. So, software engineering is a tough one. The best software engineers I know, and I can't find enough of people like this, are experienced software engineers that are really on top of AI. And frankly, I wish I could hire more people like this, right? Experienced developers that are really on top of AI. And I will also never again hire any software engineer that does not know how to use AI in a relatively sophisticated way. They're just so much less productive now than AI-enabled engineers. I suspect that the demand for software engineering will skyrocket because as the cost of software engineering plummets, we should be building a ton more software. And what I'm seeing, however, is that a lot of people that are not professional software engineers are now building software, and that's materially helping them in their jobs, their personal lives. Right now, professional software engineers that know AI are way more productive than the non-professional software engineers that just learned how to code in the last 6 months. But exactly how demand and supply for that market will shape out still eludes me a little bit. But I'll share one other thing that I'm seeing very clearly. In software engineering, we often break software work down into writing code and then also product management, right? Deciding what to build. And about a year and a half ago, start to see this really weird phenomenon where our designers and PMs, product managers, would give a spec to an engineer. And then increasingly, the engineer was building to that spec faster and faster and going back to the PM to say, now what do you want me to do? And our PMs were having trouble keeping up with the speed of the software engineers. Once upon a time, Silicon Valley used to have software engineering to product management ratios of kind of 8-to-1, 4-to-1, whatever, where one product manager can keep 4 to 8 software engineers busy. And on my teams, this ratio started to shift. It went from 8-to-1 to 4-to-1 to 2-to-1. Then eventually my team started proposing let's have a 1-to-1 ratio of product management and software engineers, because these are complements, as a speaker of economists. And it turns out that AI has dramatically accelerated software engineering, but has not dramatically accelerated product management in terms of deciding what to build. And so as a ratio, product management seems to be becoming more valuable. And so today, the best engineers I know are highly AI enabled, and many of them have also learned to do some product work. So 5 years ago, we used to have software engineers that thought their role is to take a pixel perfect Figma design and they just implement whatever they're told, right? There are good software engineers that did that. Today, those software engineers are much less valuable, because if they need to tell every little thing to do, it's just not as valuable as the software engineers. They can make some basic product and design decisions so that someone can give higher level product guidance and the software engineer do a lot more work of that themselves. And so the role of software engineering is changing. And I think if software engineers can change and adapt to this new set of job requirements, the demand for this set of skills, I don't think there's a ceiling. So I'm actually very optimistic about the profession of software engineering if we can upskill them to shift the skill mix. Oh, and by the way, just so much of software engineering used to be about syntax, kind of memorizing these arcane commands. Usually, a lot of programming syntax was because someone came up with some decision in the middle of the night. They thought this would be a good name for a function, and then it just stuck, right? And so much of software engineering was memorizing this weird stuff. So the value of memorizing syntax is rapidly going to zero. And I feel like, but the value of being able to problem solve, to decide what problems to solve, that is still very high, maybe even higher, given that the writing of the syntax of the code is becoming so easy.
We're starting to see an interesting trend where some companies are trying to take that ratio from 1 to 0. And what I mean by that is, they're vibe coding. They're using Lovable. They're using some of the new interfaces with Claude. And the PMs and the designers are banging out code. Is that a viable, a smart path forward? Or is that going to get them in trouble if they think that they can productionize that code and get it out there into the world?
So, I talked about 1-to-1 PM to engineering ratio. Increasingly, the one thing even better than that, if you take these two people and collapse them into a single human, then there are no collision overhead. And a lot of my fastest moving teams, they just keep on getting smaller. My fastest moving teams use like a 10-person team, a 5-person team, the 2-person team, and sometimes some of my 1-person teams with support around them are my fastest moving teams. And then, at least at the current level of technology, the vibe coding systems do not scale. And so we often vibe code or use AI-assisted coding to build something, but to take it to production, take it to scale, it still requires really deep expert knowledge of software engineering. But just share one other perspective. I am seeing as well that among non-software engineers, so the marketers, HR professionals, finance professionals, I'm seeing a very distinct gap in productivity among the ones that know how to code with AI assistance and the ones that do not know how to code. Because, for example, my best recruiters, they don't screen resumes by hand. They write code to help them screen resumes. Or when my marketers want to launch a marketing campaign, they don't wait around for an engineer to build the basic app or a website. My marketer just builds it themselves. My best, writers, they write custom code to smooth out the journalism process. My CFO doesn't spend weeks doing vendor shopping to try to get a custom tool or whatever. She just codes up her own software for her own custom finance workflow. And I think that this gap in productivity will increase. For the educational system, what this means is it's time to get everyone to learn to code. I think for all knowledge workers, it's very clear to me that the ones that know how to use AI to code, don't write code by hand, get AI to do it for you. But one of the most important skills of the future will be the ability to tell AI exactly what you want it to do, so it'll do it for you. And for the foreseeable future, the language of computers is coding, and getting AI to write code for you will get much better results than people that do not know how to do that.
I want to emphasize this idea of a gap that you're talking about, not just between people and knowledge workers, but between organizations that have seized this AI opportunity, that have transformed themselves, that have changed their workforces. If what you're saying is accurate, they are going to open up a very large productivity gap, innovation gap, iteration gap with their competitors who have not accomplished that transition. How easy is it going to be to close that gap if it opens up? The reason I think you're the right person to answer this, in addition to having taught countless AI students, right now, lots of business leaders come to you to say, help us with our AI transformation. We see the same thing at WorkHelix, and it strikes me that a lot of the businesses that we meet, they kind of feel like they're stuck in something like pilot mode. They haven't achieved escape velocity with any of their efforts, and it doesn't feel like the transformation is sweeping through the enterprise. Do you see the same thing? And to the extent that you do, how much trouble are those enterprises in if they can't actually transform themselves with AI to become more like your organization that you just described?
So this is important. I'm glad you raised this. We both speak with a lot of CEOs and boards about AI transformation. And so far, until now, we're talking mainly about individual productivity, which is important. But when we look at business transformation, what we've all seen over the last year is lots of bottom-up innovation, the let 1,000 flowers bloom strategy. And for most businesses, it's just not working, or it's getting tiny, small incremental efficiency gains, but not the AI transformation that has been promised to them. To me, the AI transformation is not a technology transformation, it's a business transformation led by technology. And this is why it's hard. It turns out that most businesses have to carry multiple steps in order to create value. So maybe take a bank writing loans. There's maybe you got to market the loans, the application intake, preliminary approval, final approval, execution, right? So you have to do many things to create value. For a lot of bottom-up innovation, teams will be working on one piece of the puzzle and maybe use AI to automate that. So take the preliminary loan approval, let's use AI to automate that. But if that's all you do and everything else is still business as usual, then you still have the same workflow that's now, 10% cheaper or 20% cheaper to execute, which is really nice, but it's not transformative for the business. So where bottom-up innovation often hits a ceiling, which is possible a breakthrough, is when you need to take a broader view of how the business creates value and to take what AI can now do to redesign that workflow. So what some financial institutions I know have done is to take AI preliminary loan approval and not just take the cost savings, but do something like say, hey, if instead of waiting for a week for a human to look at this for an hour to give approval, I can get AI to do it in 10 minutes, then I can offer a new product that gets back to my loan applicants not in a week, but in 10 minutes. And this is a much better product because you can get a loan in 10 minutes, not a week. But to execute that requires changing the whole workflow. You got to market it differently. Your application intake is going to be digitized. Yes, preliminary approval. You have more volume for the final approval, for the execution. So you need a broader business view to take advantage of this one AI capability to rethink the entire workflow. You can execute this bottom up if you have the bottom up meet the top down broader view, or you can have top down innovation where executives with the broader view from day one, usually a broader view, but a less good view of the specific task, comes up with this. And so a lot of the work that I know work Helix does and that my team at AI Aspire and I do is often work with businesses to sort through from a top-down level of all the ideas we use AI to execute, which ones have this transformative potential. And it's been fascinating. We do a lot of work with Bain and Company and so on, but just a couple of weeks ago, a business sent to us almost 300 project ideas that they had and was asking us at AI Aspire to sort through, of these kind of like almost 300 ideas, which ones have the transformative potential. And I'll tell you, it's hard. I find the one-size-fits-all prescriptions pretty much completely useless. That these reports that say all banks should do this, all healthcare systems should do this, I find that it just doesn't work like that. Every bank, every hospital, every manufacturing plant, every transportation company, they're all so different once you look beneath the surface. And the bad news, or good news or bad news, is it really takes that deeper dive, understanding the business, to come up with that strategy that makes sense to that business. Almost by definition, a one-size-fits-all strategy that works for all banks is that it's just not differentiated. It just doesn't feel useful to me. And I think this is why this business-led, this AI-led, this business transformation, this AI-led is taking so long. But I'm also very optimistic as we do the work that we will get there and get much more than these incremental efficiency gains.
And we've had the same experience at Work Helix. We talk to a lot of large organizations. I get the impression the leadership team is sincere about their desire to transform the company. And yet, like you say, they're kind of stalled out. They haven't seen breakout successes. And we've observed one of the things that's going on is just good old-fashioned status quo bias. For all kinds of reasons, people and the large organizations they create are resistant to exactly the kinds of deep change that you know are necessary and that you know are possible with AI. And it's hard for a lot of reasons to break through that resistance, that huge inertia. One thing that we've learned that works well is to instrument it. Because what people often say is, look, if you redesign the total claims processing process, how do we know that the quality won't suffer? How do we know that risk won't go up? How do we know that we're actually going to save money on that? And our answer is instrument it, measure it. And thanks to some innovations in economics, we can now do a causal, not just a correlation analysis, but a causal analysis of this AI change that you made over there just generated large amounts of value, and the risks that you were worried about did not show up. You and I have spent a lot of time talking with Eric Brynjolfsson, who was just on stage. I've spent so much time talking to him that I've written 3 books with him and co-founded a company with him. Eric and his team just put out the first top-tier economics journal paper about what happened to an enterprise when they put generative AI in place. And they put a sensor on everything, they instrumented everything. And the findings for me are amazing, because it turns out productivity did go up. It turns out customer satisfaction went up. It turns out employee satisfaction went up. It turns out churn went down. And all of the objections that you might hear somebody voice in advance of a project, they could deal with, not just with reassurance, but with actual data. So the conclusion that we've come from is, again, I like your insight that large organizations are not all the same underneath the hood. They are very, very different places. However, you can measure them, you can understand them, and you can instrument the transformation that a company is going to. And we think that's a really effective way to accelerate it.
Sure.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, just to add to that, what we said about the people aspect is really important. So when I speak with CEOs, one common topic is this workflow redesign, top-down innovation. The second most common topic is the people change management, because ultimately is when we bring the people with us, hopefully with instrumentation and understanding, that the people then use the AI technology to drive the change to the business. And this is, as excited as I am about technology, this is not a technology change, it's a business change. and a people change that's led by the technology.
Now I'm going to riff on that because I think the AI ecosystem needs to fire its PR department. And because they're talking about AGI, they're talking about it happening very quickly. And some of the leaders in the movement are talking about the fact that we're going to face massive technological unemployment. There are signs, exactly, Andrew, like you say, that demand for some kinds of jobs is weakening these days. That is different than saying we're about to face massive unemployment in all these different professions. One thing that we notice, though, is that a lot of leaders are scared to talk more aggressively or more enthusiastically about AI because they think their workforce will hear it as an advance layoff notice. And they're very reluctant to talk deeply about AI because they think it is just going to be that their people will hear it as an unemployment engine. And we don't see that yet. One really interesting thing that we do see when we put instruments on, we observe AI transformations very closely, is that when you watch any company, when you watch their people's actual interaction with AI, you notice that usage and quality usage follows what we would call a power law distribution. And what I mean by that is every company that we've worked with where people are jumping on AI, there's about 5% of the people that are crazy heavy users and crazy innovative users. And then it drops off very quickly from there. Now, to me, that's actually good news because it provides a huge opportunity to up-level those people, not by doing anything radical, but just by sharing existing best practices. And it turns out we humans love learning from each other. If you're required to attend the mandatory AI training, we found it's amazing how many excuses people will come up with. But when somebody 2 desks over or somebody says with a short loom video or another very lightweight mechanism, here's a thing that I'm doing that's very cool that puts hours back in my week or delighted a customer or something like that, that kind of organic best practice sharing can really catch fire, but you don't know how to do it, again, unless you're observing your transformation and instrumenting it properly. All right, in the time that we have left, what are you excited about when you look at the AI landscape or the AI for business landscape? And flip side of that, what are you pessimistic about or what are you worried about?
So, it was a couple of years ago that I coined the term agentic AI. So walking around Davos, it still feels weird to me how much people are talking about agentic everything these days. But I'm really excited about building agentic workflows into a lot of businesses. I think that will go well. What I'm worried about, I think people are often asking, is there an AI bubble? That seems a common worry. So let me say where I think there isn't and where there is a higher risk. AI is not monolithic. It's actually multiple different things. At the application layer, I'm very optimistic. We may even be underinvested. So I would keep doing more of that. AI infrastructure is where there's more of a question of is there a bubble? But let me segment that even further into AI inference and AI training. For AI inference, there's answering questions, serving LLM models. I feel like we need a lot more. Demand is through the roof. We're all getting rate limited. Let's build it. It will get used and people will get paid for it. Doesn't mean it's not possible to overbuild and maybe have low margins or maybe lose money, but let's build it. It will get used and we will pay for it with maybe margins, TV, depending on how much is built or not built. The one place I think there is a small but non-zero risk of a bubble or a greater risk of overinvestment is AI training, where I'm excited about how much scaling has grown AI, but the ever larger training clusters and the concentration of training by a handful of companies, some of which are using very innovative debt and other financial instruments. I think there's just a slightly elevated. I'm not freaked out. I'm still bullish about the whole sector, but I think that's where the risk of overinvestment is greatest. But I think this remains overall for the entire stack, especially the application layer, but really the entire stack, a wonderful time to just keep on building.
Andrew, on behalf of everybody who's learned from you, I want to say thanks. I want to say thank you for being a great colleague to me. I want to say thank you for leading our seed round investment in Work Helix. We're grateful for all kinds of reasons. Andrew Ng, everybody.